Hello, BNS 380. How's it going? I showered. I've put on makeup. I put on a real shirt. Just saying, ready to record some lectures today. So, okay. So today we're going to get into female reproductive behavior. We're going to start off by just talking simply about the menstrual cycle. That's what we're going to hit on today. I did post up a 15-minute video from this guy, Armando. I really love him. I am going to be sharing several of his videos actually as we move through some of these processes. And he's great. Any of you guys that are considering like med school or nursing or PA or anything like that, he has the best anatomy videos. I recommend following him on YouTube. He is thebomb.com, for real. Okay, so when we talked about male sexual behavior before, it's important to remember mating strategies. Remember, our whole goal in life is to spread the seed, right? And we need to do that in the best way possible. And we have different behaviors. Mammals, birds, all of these species have different behaviors because of how they can best pass on their genes. So there's this idea, right, that males are out there and they're just on the hunt all the time, and that females are kind of the passive recipient. Well, what studies suggest is that even in the animal world, like, it is the female that does most of the initiating. And I've even seen this in my birds. Whenever the male is just chilling, the female will go over and start pecking him, like, what's up? Come on, let's do this, right? So this is actually a false statement that females are just thought to just kind of like, all right, right? But this is not something legit. In most species, humans included, it is the female that does most of the initiating. So males are the seekers. They go out, and remember, they're the ones, remember we talked about the elephant seals setting up the beachfront property. There are lots of fish, male fish and birds too, that make nests. And they're like, look at my nest, what you think? Come lay your eggs in here, right? So it is the males that are out there looking that try to make themselves attractive to females. But it is females that are the ones that are going to choose. Because for most species, and we'll get into this when we get into parenting behavior, it is the female that has to raise the young. So for males, they are best because they have the small gametes, right? Large numbers of small gametes. They work best whenever they are spreading the sperm everywhere. Spread it, spread it, spread it, impregnate as many females as possible. But females are the ones that have to choose what genes does she want for her young. And she wants her young to live so they can pass on her genes too, right? So you have to pick the best fit male for your offspring. So the females are the ones that are choosing because they have a larger stake in that outcome, which is the babies, because they are the ones that are mostly, we'll talk about some exceptions, but this is true for humans. It is the females that do the majority of the parenting. Okay, so some studies suggest that males have a much higher sex drive than females, but mostly that's not true. Females tend to be equal, actually, and this is true for most of the animal kingdom as well. The only difference really is that for females, this works on a cyclical fashion, because females are only able to get pregnant for just a couple days out of the month for humans. And it's different for different species, but even rats, they only go into heat every 4 days. So they're only able to get pregnant every 4 days. So because this works on a cyclical fashion, then it is a little bit different, but nevertheless, when it is time, whenever they are ovulating, then certainly their sex drive is just the same as males. There's not much we know about female sexual behavior. We talked about this when we talked about the Kinsey research studies. There's just not much we know about humans in general. Very understudied. Okay, so this brings me to this doctor, George, oh gosh, I'm not gonna be able to say this, Papanicolaou, I don't know. Anyway, he was an anatomy professor at Cornell, and he was the one that first discovered the cells of the uterus. And he was doing these vaginal smears. He used guinea pigs, and he was just checking out the cells. And he noticed that they changed throughout the cycle. And so I just thought this was interesting. I just wanted to introduce this guy to you all. This is why it's called a pap smear when females go in and get their monthly or their yearly exam, or I guess every 3 years now, right? Something like that. Anyway, he was the guy that discovered this. He was the one that discovered these cancer cells. So he's the one that, he was the one that really started this research and learned that these cells change throughout the month. Okay, so as I was saying, females work on a cyclical fashion, and it's different for different animals. We're going to talk about, not today, not in this lecture, maybe today, we'll see, because I'm all showered and stuff. I should just go with it. For rats, this process is called estrus, and estrus is meaning in heat or in a frenzy. And so an animal that goes through estrus, like female rats are only receptive to males during that time period where they are in estrus. But humans are a little bit different, right? We could have sex all the time. It doesn't, there's nothing that prevents us from having sex at certain times, but females actually are unable to have sex except for whenever they're in estrus, female rats, to clarify. The shorter the lifespan, generally speaking, the less time they are pregnant. Of course, if you think about horses and elephants, they have a shorter lifespan than us, and they're pregnant a lot longer than us. But nevertheless, the shorter your lifespan, the shorter your gestation period, generally speaking. So different things work differently for different species depending on what is best for their reproductive success. And then we have menstrual cycles. This is what we're going to talk about today for humans, and most non-human primates have a menstrual cycle. And it's called menstrual for moon because it goes on a monthly basis. Okay, so generally speaking, females first go through puberty at around age 11. This age is actually decreasing, probably because of nutrition in our country. But generally somewhere between 11 to 15 years, this is whenever a female will have her first menstrual cycle. The average cycle is 28 days. Most of this class is female. Again, sorry, Brooks, but you can think about this and think about your own cycles. They're probably not always exactly 28 days, but this is average. Anywhere between 21 and 35 days is considered normal. Generally, the bleeding part is anywhere from 2 to 7 days, and this is considered normal. But for humans, we don't know when ovulation happens unless we're tracking our cycles and are doing this on purpose. Generally, ovulation is an event that is just kind of hidden. We do not know that it happens. Nothing necessarily happens that would let us know that now this is when this is happening. Okay, so let's talk about the ovaries. We've talked about males and their mating strategy because they have lots of small gametes and they're making new sperm all the time. Sorry, I almost knocked my cat off, the ottoman here. But females are a little bit different because we are born with all of the ovaries we're ever going to have. So you have roughly about 500,000 follicles. And for people here in the United States that generally start their periods, 12, 13 years old, and if you have a menstrual cycle every month until you're 50, then you're going to roughly have about 400 cycles in your lifetime. So about 400 eggs have the potential to be fertilized. So we're not going to really get into the video that I posted goes into this in a lot more detail. We're not really going to go into a lot of the detail about the actual cells, the actual egg cell, but these are follicles and they have been frozen. So again, every baby is born with all of the egg cells. Every female baby is born with all the egg cells that they're going to have in life, but they're frozen at a very specific stage in meiosis. And so every month, one follicle will get selected to continue on with that process and will be released. So these are called follicles, and it has the oocyte, and this is the egg cell, and is surrounded by these granulosous cells. Okay, so in the actual menstrual cycle, we have 3 different phases, and the menstrual cycle itself will start on day 1, which is the day of the menstrual period. So when the bleeding starts, this is day 1 of the cycle. And this is known as the follicular phase. And this phase is roughly, depending on your cycle, is about 14 days, and it will end in ovulation. Ovulation is a 1-day event. The egg is released, and once the egg is released, it is alive for about 12 to 24 hours is the potential that it could be fertilized. So it's just a one-day event for ovulation. Depending on how things happen, it is the follicular phase that can vary in its time because the body chooses an egg in this time period. It's looking at the follicles. It's like, this one, maybe this one, maybe this one, and it'll choose one to develop. Sometimes the body makes a bad choice and it chooses a different one. So this will lengthen the follicular phase. So if you have longer cycles, then the reason is because of this particular follicular phase. Then you have ovulation, and then you'll go into the luteal phase, which is the next 2 weeks. So this is after ovulation. And the luteal phase is almost always 14 days. It doesn't vary very much, even from woman to woman. It doesn't vary very much. If you have a shorter luteal phase, you probably have a hormonal deficit. So it is set in its time. So you have ovulation, and then you'll have 2 weeks where the body is getting ready. The body's like, oh yeah, we got an egg. We're going to have a baby. It's going to be great. And then at the end of the luteal phase, if that egg is not fertilized, the body's like, oh, whoosh, and cleanses the system to start all over again. Try again. Okay, so this is how it all goes down from a hormonal perspective. So let's do this. All right, so first, of course, we have gonadotropin-releasing hormone, which is going to initiate, which is going to come from the preoptic area. And when you first go through puberty, this is initiated by kisspeptin. So then remember when I was talking about this, whenever we were talking about male reproductive behavior, is that gonadotropin-releasing hormone, it's very important that it pulsates. It cannot be constant. If it's constant, then it shuts that system down. So we're going to have gonadotropin-releasing hormone that's going to be released in a pulsatile manner from the preoptic area of the hypothalamus, and it is going to pulsate onto the anterior pituitary. So then it's going to cause the anterior pituitary to release follicle-stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. And this process so far is the exact same as it is in males. Okay, so follicle-stimulating hormone in females, where it starts spermatogenesis and goes to the Sertoli cells in males. What it does here is it does that follicle recruitment. So it is the follicle-stimulating hormone that is going to be important for choosing the right egg. So it's this hormone that's going to go through and cause those granulosa cells that surround that oocyte to start growing. So again, it's going through that process like, this follicle, this one is trying to select the very best one to develop. And that's the one, the chosen one that will be released that month. Okay, so once this follicle has been selected, okay, the ovaries themselves release small amounts of estrogen or are releasing estrogen. But once the follicle has been selected, the follicle itself is going to start releasing estradiol, E2. And this is one of the exceptions. So we talked about how most hormone systems are working on that negative feedback, which is like our thermostat. It has a set temperature, and then it'll drop and it'll kick back on and kick back off, right? That's how it works with males. So in this particular instance, we are going to have a moment, and it is just a moment of a positive feedback loop. And so what happens here is the follicle, the selected follicle, is going to start releasing estrogen. Estrogen is going to feed back onto the anterior pituitary, and it's going to cause luteinizing hormone to surge. This huge surge. There's actually sticks that you can get to measure this. When this LH surge happens, it is this surge in luteinizing hormone that causes the egg to be released from its follicle, to be released out. So if you are interested in tracking your cycles and you don't want to be on birth control, you could use these little sticks and they'll turn positive whenever high levels of luteinizing hormone are in your body, and that suggests that ovulation will happen within the next few days. So once this happens, the cervix is going to start getting ready. We're about to ovulate, so we got to have everything perfect so that the sperm can meet the egg if there are sperm present. So the cervix is getting that mucus ready. The mucus is going to change a little bit. The mucus really needs to be pretty watery because sperm are pretty sensitive and they don't like hostile environments, and they got a long way to go once they get in there. So they really need some nice watery liquid mucus in there to really be able to survive and swim and get to where they need to go in the cervix. So this is going to start happening. So the follicle, once the luteinizing hormone surges, within about between 12 to 48 hours after that surge, this is whenever the egg is going to rupture. So you're going to have the ovulation event. Okay. All right. So now we have the egg. It's been released, and that those granulosa cells that were surrounding it is going to turn into what's known as a corpus luteum. And so this corpus luteum is going to start producing and releasing progesterone. So the egg's gone, the egg is traveling down the fallopian tubes, it's heading towards the cervix, it's on its journey, it's on its way. But that remaining cell that it burst from is going to start releasing progesterone. And it does release a little bit of estrogen itself. So progesterone is really important. This is the pregnancy hormone. This is what gets the body ready for pregnancy. So again, we already released the egg, so we don't need to worry about pregnancy, about any more sperm getting up there. We don't care anymore. So the mucus is going to start to change in the body. It's going to start to get really thick. And sperm don't like this. So this is a real bad time to try to get pregnant. And plus the egg's already gone anyway. So the progesterone is going to cause the endometrium layer, which is the layer of cells that surrounds the cervix and the uterus, and it's going to start to grow. And this is the blood layer. And this is important because we need these nutrients for any baby to grow. Because ideally, what the body wants to do is if that egg is fertilized, it's going to bury into that endometrium layer, and it's going to connect, and it's going to start to make a placenta, and it's going to bury itself in there and live happily ever after. Progesterone does something really interesting. If you've ever heard of taking your basal body temperature to monitor your cycles, this is a real thing, because body temperature in the morning is real low until after ovulation. This progesterone is going to actually raise that body temperature. Progesterone is going to feed back, and now we're back in the negative feedback system. So progesterone, estrogen is going to feed back, and it's going to decrease follicle stimulating and luteinizing hormone. And as these two hormones start to drop, this is going to cause the corpus luteum to die. So progesterone is going to be shut off from this particular area. If you have a fertilized egg and it has buried itself into the endometrium layer, the placenta is going to start to grow, and the placenta will start releasing progesterone to keep itself going. But in the event that you don't have a fertilized egg, then the falling FSH and LH is going to cause the that corpus luteum to die. Progesterone is going to start to fall. Estrogen is going to start to fall, and it is these levels that falling progesterone, that falling estrogen, which is then going to cause the menstrual cycle to begin, because that endometrium layer is not going to be needed. The egg wasn't fertilized, so it's going to slough off, and the body's going to get ready for the next cycle. So here you see a picture that's showing this follicle. You have the primary follicle here. Hang on just a sec. Let me get my spotlight. Okay. So we have, come on now. Yeah. All right. So we have, go away. Now go away. I don't know what I'm doing. Let me try this again. Give me my spotlight. Okay, so we have, I hope this bar isn't all in your way. Okay, so here we have the follicle that is being selected, and then finally once it's selected, you can see the cells around it. The egg will, after the LH surge, the egg will burst from its follicle, and then this remaining part will turn into the corpus luteum, where it will release progesterone until those LH and FSH levels fall, which causes it to die. All right, next. Gosh. Okay, this seems like a good place to stop for this particular video. So be sure you check out the one from Armando online, and we'll talk to you guys later. See ya.